Enjoy talking about what I call the 13th season. And 13th season, basically, it kind of goes back to my beginning. I grew up down south during a very special time, a time that I'm very happy I took part in, with a family I'm so happy and proud to be part of, and a race that I'm also very proud of. It was during a time when we were trying to overcome the prejudice of our fathers in the 60s. I remember in the 7th grade, I was standing in a line in front of the Florida State Theater because we could not go inside that theater at the time. But it was a special time because I look back decades later and I'm so proud of who we are, because we will always look to become our better selves if given time. That's who we are. That's the Americans we are. And it was such a good time for me to begin the process, because in my 10th grade year, I don't know how many of you guys remember seeing the movie Remember the Titans. Well, that was my experience. 10th grade year, those 4 black athletes integrated in this once all-white school, Rutgers High School. And it was a very interesting year. It was one in which we were surrounded by a bunch of guys the first week or two and promised that we weren't going to be there, we weren't going to last. And I remember the commitment the 4 of us made to each other that we were going to see this thing through no matter how tough it got. And it got somewhat tough at times. I still carry scars from that year. But what came out of it was really interesting, because we did hang in, we showed our value, we stayed tough. And by the time the year finished, not that everything had become honky-dory, but by the time the year finished up, we had guys that at one point didn't want us there, didn't like us for whatever reason, that respected us, because we hung tough, we didn't quit, and we provided value. And there was a second part of that, and that is we saw ourselves different. We saw ourselves through the eyes of people now who respected us, and we respected ourselves even more, because we had made this commitment to each other, and we hung tough and stayed through. Well, my next year, my junior year, was a little different. The focus on the color was still there, but not quite as strong, because we found something else that we loved even more. It's called winning. We loved this feeling of winning. And it got to the point where we began to think more about how can we work together to win than anything else. And we were a winning team that year. We were good enough to get to the state playoffs. I had one game in which was the best game of my entire athletic career against a crosstown rival. I won't get into the details, but it played a big part later on. This one game of my junior year was one I can always reflect back on. So we got to the state championship, didn't win, but being the young, cocky young people that we were, we figured no big deal, we'll come back next year and we'll do it. We'll make this thing happen. Well, as life happens, everything fell apart. The team, many of the players that were key players, including myself, got hurt. Team fell apart. The harmony that we had began to dissipate, and it became a disastrous year. The year before, I had college letters coming in, and all these options I had. Well, my senior year, nothing was happening. As far as I was concerned, I didn't know I was going to play football anywhere. So I came up with this great idea. I said, since no one else is recruiting me, let me see if I can find a place I can go to that might take a look at me. So I looked at the University of Miami. Now, a couple things happened with why University of Miami. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, and one winter it got down to 32 degrees in Tallahassee. Now, that's cold in Tallahassee. It was cold enough for me to say I cannot go any further north than here. So between that and the fact I wanted to do marine biology, and I figured, well, this is a place I can go down south and close to the water. Let me see if I can get down in that direction. Well, I went to my coach, and since I didn't know what else to do, I said, Coach, I'd love you to send some information down to Miami to see if they have an interest. And he was inspired. He took that one game from my junior year, a year earlier, spliced it, made that the focus, and sent it down to the University of Miami. And they thought this was the latest and greatest Burgess Owens. Sent me a ticket to come down, and I signed as quick as I could before they figured this whole thing out. Now, I knew nothing about Miami. This is before the internet. This is for, listen, guys, I wasn't trying to to figure out which best school to, based on my football prowess. I just wanted to go somewhere. So I didn't know that Miami was one of the worst teams I can go to if I wanted to play football. I was just happy to play anywhere at that time. So I went down to University of Miami. It was not the university that many of you guys think about today. You know, most people think of Miami as a national championship winning team. Well, it was, by the way, the first U, just so you know. I know, just in case there's any, we were the first U. But at the time, Miami couldn't win football games. It was a great place for the best teams to come to go to the Orange Bowl and have fun in the sun and win their game and go back home. But it left us with only 2 or 3 games a season winning. And this went on for 4 years. So when I ended up my senior year in high school at the beginning of my 13th season, I'm now into it. 4 years at the University of Miami, not 1 winning season. Now, what I did learn, though, very, very important lesson, is I learned to become an eternal optimist. I learned that you come to a point in life where you have to make a decision. Do I keep fighting forward, or do I quit? And if you keep fighting forward, you have to find a reason, something that will keep you motivated. And my motivation was, it has to get better than this. Next game, next year, I know it's going to get better. And I got so much into the habit that every year, this expectation came. And though I was disappointed every year, I realized the next year has to be better. Well, we went on for 4 years, not getting any better. So I went on to the Jets. And by the way, I call those 4 years at the University of Miami my character building years. I was drafted to the Jets, and I had another 7 years of character building years. My graduate program of character building years. For 7 years, not 1 winning season. And I look back, I reflect on that now. I know it's only a game. It's only a game. It's not earth-shattering. It doesn't change the world. But when you're in the middle of it, your blood, sweat, and tears, and your self-esteem, and everything's built on winning. And you're watching your buddies go to Super Bowl games and playoffs, and here, once again, you're home early. You kind of get depressed. You get a little down. And I remember the 7th year with the Jets, I was really getting a little bit down. And I think back on that. Isn't it interesting how we all are in this sense? Here we are. We have some of the greatest blessings that in the history of mankind. We live in the freest world, the freest country, where we get up every single day and make decisions of how we're going to attack that day, what we're going to do for ourselves, what is our future going to be like, what is my dream about today. And yet, we get depressed by those little things that just don't go right for us. Got stuck on I-19. It's 1915, I'm sorry, I'm just getting I-15. Little things that we really sometimes forget how blessed we really are. Well, that year, we wanted to kind of decided to do my best, continue on, and I was traded to the Raiders. Now, for those who are young in this room, do not have gray hair yet, at one point the Raiders was a winning football game. They won a lot of football games. They really were. I can remember being on the sideline, on the other sideline with the Jets, playing against the Raiders and saying, man, it would be nice to be with those guys, as they're beating us, of course. Well, I had an opportunity to get with them. This was the 13th season. We're not supposed to be a winning team. It was kind of a rebuilding team, but things just happened. The synergy was right. We had the right attitude. We had many of us who were so desperate to win that we just gave everything we had and more. And we not only had the first winning season since high school. I went to the first playoff game since high school. And lo and behold, here we are sitting in the locker room getting ready to go out to play a Super Bowl game. It was an unbelievable experience for me to go ahead out there, and we end up beating the Eagles in Super Bowl 15. And that was the highlight of that 13th season. The only thing that we regretted as a team, because we had so much fun, is we had nobody else to play. The moral of that story, though, is this. each and every one of us are promised a 13th season. There'll come that day, that point, that year where everything is worked out the way you'd hoped, that everything you've gone through is worth it, that this moment is one that you will always remember for the rest of your life. It might be a college experience, it might be a family experience, it'll be something that you say it was worth every long night that I went through. But that season will only come by going through the 12. And those 12 of the years, the times, the seasons where you wonder, how in the world did I get here? How did this happen? How can I get out? What can I do? How can I turn this thing around quickly? Because it's very painful. And just know everyone goes through it. That's where you grow. That's the character. That's the humbleness. That's the faithfulness we learn. It's through those tough times. And though I wear the Super Bowl ring, and I can highlight, and I only wear it when I come out, by the way, it diminishes in value with time. But it gives me the opportunity to talk about the 13th season, about that last year in high school, the 4 years in college, the 7 years with the Jets. We're trying to figure out, what can I do to turn this